so excited tonight because we have an amazing special guest, one half of the White People Won't Save You podcast. Jordan Clark is here, and we're going to bring Jordan on. But I'm going to read his bio first because it is dope and extensive, and you need to understand who Jordan is, right? So, our guest, Jordan Clark, is a comic book writer and podcast host based in Baltimore. Shout out to Baltimore. We will be there later this year for Afros and Audio, so we'll be in the spot. He's written for DC Comics, Image Comics, and was part of the inaugural Milestone Initiative class. If I reach back, if it was close enough, I have my Milestone comics back here. I have a few back there in the back I just got. Anyway, he co-hosts the podcast White People Won't Save You with Cameron Mason. And each week they deconstruct a different white savior movie and recontextualize them through a Black and POC lens. Q Points family, welcome Jordan Clark to the show. What's up?
Welcome back.
What's good, y'all? How's it going?
I'm fantastic.
I'm happy to be here, man. The whole conversation y'all were having before, I was just like, yeah. So I'm right there with y'all and everything. I'm excited to talk with y'all tonight.
Absolutely, man. We are so grateful to have you here. And so to catch folks up, so we want to start with just talking to you about your work. So one of the things we mentioned in the bio is you're a comic book writer. I'm a new comic book reader as of
Welcome.
2022. I'm very excited. And so I think let's start there because we know comics are important to literature and people learning. How did you first discover comics and kind of what drew you to them? Let's start there.
For sure. I think exactly like you're saying, like comics for kids are like a very easy entry into stories and learning to read and all that stuff. And even like I remember Ta-Nehisi Coates saying that like that's how he learned how to read was through comics that his mom would get him, and he would kind of start there. Specifically back like way back in the day with like Stan Lee and all them, it was like a very verbose vocabulary because they had to really like hype up the action there. So I think that's how I got in, because I was a child of the 90s, and so you had all the cartoons going on at the time. It was Batman or Spider-Man or X-Men, and so I'd watch the shows and I'd be like, oh well, I want more of that. So where's that? Oh, it's on the comic book, so let me get as many comics as I can get, you know what I mean? And like I would my family's from Chicago, so we would go to Chicago every summer and we would stop at all these different antique malls, on the way. And they would just be, I don't know why this is the case, but it was always the case. The comics would be next to like the Playboys and like the other, like, just like, I guess the thinking was these are the things that I don't want and I have a lot of. And so they all kind of ended up in the same area. But I would just, go and pick up like a couple different comics, and it would just be random stuff. It would just be like, here's a Incredible Hulk, or here's a Fantastic Four, or here's a Batman. Like I didn't know anything. I was just like, I like these characters, so let me just pick this up and start reading. But as I got older, and specifically like I went to Morgan State University in Baltimore, and I had a professor there that was very like, yo, you should read comics. Like here are all these comics that I love, and like, I see that you're into these things, but like, you're not reading the source material. So like check all this stuff out. And like, when you start to really get into it, like comics is a wide range of stuff. Right. And so obviously there's superheroes and all that. And that's, something that I love very much, but there's all kinds of comics that, even when you look at, stuff like March, and you look at stuff like Mouse, and you look at all these different books that are really opening things up to either social debates or people's like personal journeys through things. I think that comics has such a wide variety of things to offer, as much as any other genre. And so for me, I was just like, I'm a visual thinker and a visual person, and like if I was going to tell stories, like that was kind of what really attracted me to it. So I just kind of jumped in, starting in college.
Awesome.
So Jordan, you're clearly a connoisseur of comic books and comic book lore. Exactly. So what do you recommend, or how do you encourage someone who has never picked up a comic before? Like
Mm,
I used to read comics as a kid. um I think the last series that I ever got into was, there was a very limited Thundercats comic book
mm,
series. That's because I was a major fan of the cartoon.
yeah.
But as I got older, I kind of drifted away from it. But if someone never even ever picked up a comic book before, what are your words to them to say, hey, I got something that you're going to like? How are you going to encourage them?
I would say today, honestly, 90% of culture is comics. Like all of the things that you're seeing on television, on movies, all of this stuff, and it's Marvel, but there's a whole bunch of other things that came from comics that got adapted. Like if you saw the Paper Girl show on Amazon, that was a comic initially. Why the Last Man, that was
Mm,
on FX, that was a comic initially. The Walking Dead was a comic initially. You know what I mean? Like all of these things that have become very successful properties in other places, started off as comic books. And so I think partially, like I was saying before, it's a wide range of things, right? So like, what is it that you like? What is it that you enjoy? Do you like horror? There's a whole list of horror comics that are, amazing to get into, lots of science fiction comics. But again, there's also things that are talking about people's personal journeys. There's books that I've read that have been stories of immigrants coming from other countries to America. There's stories that I've read about, people's battles and trials trying to get abortions and healthcare and things like that. I've done comics just about like James Baldwin's experiences in Paris and other stuff. Like comics can be whatever you're looking for. So whatever your uh genre of choice is, there's not only a comic for it, but there's a whole bunch of stuff to choose from. So comics can be intimidating, I know, initially, like specifically if you just walk into a comic book shop. You're like,
yes.
what is all this? There's so much to look at.
Hmm.
But there's so many podcasts, there's so many websites, there's so many places that I think, just simple directories and lists that you could just jump into and like hit me up on Twitter. I'll tell you. Wait, just tell me what you like and I'll find something for you. Because I feel like comics are for everybody, and no matter what it is that you're into, there's a comic for you.
I'm glad you said that, Jordan, because sidebar, J Ray, if you are single, listener, if you're a single person and you are trying to dip into the dating pool, I think it's best that you get yourself acquainted with comic book culture and gaming culture, or blurred
Blurred
culture
culture.
as a whole, if as they call it, because from what I've witnessed, I've noticed that a lot of people, especially young people of a certain age, this is really a
Hmm.
huge part of their life. And I say that to say that the community is large, and there's a lot of solidarity in the
Hmm.
community that is engaged with comic book culture and gamer culture as a whole. So just a little advice from Uncle Sir Daniel, if that's what you need, you go to a comic book store, you might meet your next date there.
Right.
And
Just post up, just start opening a book, maybe somebody might walk up. You start a conversation, you never know.
and that's really it. So, Jordan, catch everybody up and tell our audience a bit about the White People Won't Save You podcast and how it came about.
Hmm. Well, it's we've been at it for a while now, like almost we're going a year and some change straight. Because we
Awesome.
started right when the pandemic hit, and I had done some podcast stuff before that was kind of like smaller scale, and it was always just me and a lot of me relying on guests and people to come in and talk about different things. But I'm a big movie fan, and like I'm a big fan of all these different movie podcasts, but I love a bad movie. And um, I was looking around because I had a thought, and I was like, these white savior films are crazy, and there's so many of them, and so many of them are terrible. And there's all these podcasts that are kind of going through, oh, haha, let's laugh at this movie or that movie, but it's like nobody's doing a podcast about this. And I was like, well, certainly somebody, because like there's a podcast about everything, right? Like at a certain point, you're just like, well,
True.
somebody's got to be doing. And I looked it up, and I was like, nobody's doing this. Like this is crazy. And my friend Cameron Mason, is like he knows everything. He's like a movie encyclopedia, and he's an actor, and he has all this insight into film and filmmaking. And I hit him up, and I was like, I know this sounds crazy, but would you like to do this podcast with me? It's going to be at a certain point. I don't know if we're going to make it, but we're going to watch these white savior films, and we're going to see if we can like we said, deconstruct them, because I think there's humor there. There's something to laugh at. There's just wild stuff going on, but there's also real conversations, real topics to get into, just because like this is happening, right? Like Hollywood has not stopped making these movies. Like this year there were two. There were what was it? Guy Ritchie's The Covenant and Kandahar, and they were the same movie. They were the same, the soldier or the CIA or somebody trying to get a translator out of a Middle Eastern country. And it's just like, wow, twice in the same month. Okay. That's bold.
Right.
J-Ray, I see you. Go ahead.
No, adding to your list, Sir Daniel, you might agree with this. I think you and Cameron should check out Spinning Gold. I think Spinning Gold is a
Oh,
white savior
absolutely.
film too.
Okay.
It came out
Okay.
this
Totally a
year.
white savior film.
We'll look into that. We'll look
Yes.
into that. I mean, that's the
Yes.
thing. We've been doing this so long that people are now coming to like they see something and they're like, "Yo, we know exactly who to tell because
Yep.
this looks wild."
Because white people save disco and R&B.
Oh my god!
Yes,
Yeah.
they literally did. When you watch the film, you'll see what we saw. We talked about it a bit on our
Okay.
show. It's a lot going on, but crazy. So Hollywood is still making these films, but y'all have now watched so many films. We're curious, what's been the worst one that you've watched so far, and what was the film about from your perspective?
I would say it's almost a three-way tie for
Wow.
different reasons. They're all terrible,
Mhm.
and you shouldn't watch any either. But they're just
Unless you want to
so.
laugh.
Well, I guess maybe we'll see. So there's the first one is White Man's Burden, which is the first one that we ever did. It is a movie with John Travolta and Harry Belafonte. It was from the 90s. It's literally the next movie that John Travolta does after Pulp Fiction, and it is about
It was White Man's Burden.
it was White Man's Burden. It doesn't make sense because even the tagline is something like reality just switched sides, and the concept is that black and white people switch places in the social standings. I guess they don't explain anything. They don't say if white people were slaves. They don't say if black people came from Europe. None of this makes sense. It's just all of a sudden this is happening, and it's hard to get through at points because John Travolta is doing a black scent all the way through. Harry Belafonte
Oh,
looks like
God.
he's just there. They must have given him a lot of money to do this, but it's just wild in general, and you can't stream it. We had to get a DVD copy of it to watch it. The second one is called The Cricket's Dance, and this was a movie that was brought to our attention by somebody on Twitter, and it's another wild movie that you can watch on Amazon. It's about this white woman in Georgia who inherits a plantation home and like finds a diary kept by the wife of the plantation owner that is talking about the history of the plantation. She meets a black man at her job. Guess what happens?
His family was on that plantation.
And then what happens?
They
They
fall
get
in
together.
love.
Exactly. They
Oh
find
my
the,
god! Oh my
See?
god! We've never
We're
seen
film
it.
writers. We're film writers, J. Ray. We're film
yeah,
writers, basically. At
they
this point.
find the chains of former slaves still on the grounds. It's crazy. None of it makes sense. It's very
God.
upsetting, but it's like a step below a Lifetime movie in quality. So it's a wild film to watch. And the very last one is called Black or White, and it's a movie with ooh, what's his name? Dance with Wolves and
Kevin Costner.
Patrick.
Kevin
Oh
Costner.
yeah.
It's a Kevin Costner film that's about Kevin Costner, uh, his daughter. They never really explain what happens, but she has died, and he has come into custody of her child, who she had with a black man, and then
Hmm.
there's a custody battle that breaks out between the black family and Kevin Costner. Kevin Costner is an alcoholic. And he still wants to have this sweet black child in his home. He is totally unfit to be a parent, and yet the movie keeps trying to push us in a position where he's supposed to be given. You feel like he should be given custody, and I forget the exact words that he used. Okay. I'm blanking on names today. But the grown up love interest of Moonlight. I'm blanking on. He's at the very end of the movie. Uh,
You know what? I don't know
Oh,
his name. I know him as Light Skin Kevin, but
yes,
that's not his
yes,
name.
yeah.
that's
He's a
not his
great
name.
actor. That's really sad because he's an amazing actor.
He's an amazing actor. I know who you're
He's an
talking about.
amazing actor, and Kevin Costner in this movie looks him in the eye and calls him a street nigger. And that alone
Oh
makes
wow!
this one of the
Wow.
worst movies we've watched, because he says that and then gets custody of a black child.
Oh, and they gave him custody.
They certainly did.
That is the pinnacle of white savior, the white savior movie. That
You
should
can
be
go
at the top of
full
the list.
out racist and be like,
And
nope,
get the
this guy
black
should
child.
have the black child.
Like in
Wow.
court, like he says it to him just on the street, but then they bring it up in court and they're like, "Did you say that?" And he was like, "Yeah." And they're like, "I mean, I guess you can still have the kid. I don't know." It's just like, what? It's
Bizarre.
yeah, it's
Bizarre.
bizarre and bad. But I mean, we got into each of those. We had good conversations around each of those. But like, it is our burden to watch a lot of these films so that you all don't have to.
And Jordan, we thank you. We thank you
Yeah,
from the bottom of our
I'm doing the
heart.
work.
But you're doing God's work, as a matter of fact. And
Yeah.
now, what I do want to ask you, two things. One, have you ever seen A Day Without the Mexican?
I've heard of it. I have not seen it.
Okay, so that you should check out. It's not directly about black people, but it's still when white
Yes.
Yeah,
people are involved and they're losing their
yeah.
mind because all the Mexican people have all of a sudden disappeared. But anyway, so
Mm.
with that said, as you can tell, Jordan and Cameron are doing God's work with the White People Won't Save You podcast. And you all have some great summer programming lined up. A
For
couple
sure.
of some live watches. Please let our listeners know how they can get involved and be a part of your experience, so they can this little nugget that they just had with the three of
Yeah,
us, so
yeah.
that they can get it full on with you and Cameron.
Come through, yeah. So we if you go to our Twitter, which is white_pod, we have our Discord up there where you can join us on Discord. That's where we do our live watches. So just recently we did a live watch with a podcast called Uke Horror, and they're like a Spanish horror movie podcast. So they watch a lot of different, Spanish horror movies. And they came on and they watched a movie with us called Ninja Vengeance, which is about a white ninja
Hmm.
who I guess technically avenges a black man killed by the KKK, but like doesn't
Just a
really,
lie.
because he doesn't even know this man. He just shows up in town. This man happens to get killed, and he's like, "I guess it's ninja time." I don't know. Like it's it was very confusing. It was fun to watch. So
So now, Ninja Vengeance is not to be confused with American Ninja, which features our favorite breakdancing white girl.
Yeah, no,
uh,
that's got to be a different movie because no,
that's a different movie.
yeah,
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
yes, okay.
American Ninja series is also great in its own right, but this
yes,
is a different thing.
the
Gotcha.
'80s. My goodness.
Yeah.